play right, cause they can't miss. All about the game, that's a cold switch. Serving up the truth, call it ruthless. Tune in and get your fix from Blake and Vish Sports.
49ers did a really interesting thing on Sunday when they played the Raiders, right? And for full disclosure, to be fair, this is a preseason game. The Raiders obviously were nowhere near prepared for this type of quarterback transition, and it was the Raiders' second and third team defense. None of their high-profile starters played, but the 49ers unveiled this new interesting two-quarterback strategy. And it was unlike any two-quarterback strategy we've seen in a long time.
In the NFL.
In the NFL. It's been a very long time. I mean, people bring up Drew Brees, Taysom Hill, and Taysom Hill spared Drew Brees was for plays. We didn't see an even 50-50 where Drew Brees on a given drive would just be pulled out on second and 10, and then come back in 4 plays later. That was very rare. Lamar Jackson, Joe Flacco, they tried this. It worked horribly in Baltimore. They never let Lamar get into a rhythm, and Joe Flacco probably had the worst body language in America when this happened. Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz, they kind of did this last year. They ran a few run plays with Carson Wentz, but to me it was predictable when Jalen Hurts came in there running the football, and you kind of knew what they were doing. But the Niners took it to a next level, and they took a next level in a lot of different ways. But they took a first-round pick rookie who they traded 2 first-round picks up and a third one and drafted number 3 overall, and they have a quarterback that they're paying $26 million this year, and they were just rotating them. They were literally rotating them like it was you play 2 plays, you play 2 plays. You play 3 plays, I play 3 plays. And it was interesting. It was effective against the Raiders' second-team defense on Sunday. But, Blake, what are your thoughts on the overall 2-quarterback strategy? And if the 49ers do this week 1, week 2, week 3 of this season until, I guess, they figure out who's going to be there, until they figure out whether Trey Lance is 100% ready to take over, do you think it will remain effective?
Here's just my initial thoughts. Like, this is just such a wacky concept. I feel like, at least being, I've never played quarterback, but I feel like, just from watching it, it would just be weird and trying to get a rhythm or any consistency if you're coming in and your leash is so tight that if you make one errant throw where you do one thing wrong, you hand it off wrong or whatever, you're just pulled next play, middle of drive. Like, that is just such a short leash. I cannot imagine that being good for either of these guys' psyches. Not that Jimmy G's is probably good as it is. They drafted his replacement. But yeah, that I think strikes me as interesting. Second point, I just don't get the purpose behind it. Like, the best case scenario is you'll catch them off guard and forcing them to prepare for 2 quarterbacks. Well, at the same time, your offense is going to have to prepare for 2 quarterbacks. And then the receivers, one play they're going from Jimmy G's better, I guess, not as hard throw, maybe a little better touch on it, to Trey Lance's fastball that seems to go high for whatever reason. That for the receivers is tough. So that from that standpoint, like, would that be the best part, is just the defense has to plan for 2? I just don't remember a recent situation where teams were constantly pulling quarterbacks like this, and it turned out good in the long term. I'd say Tua and Fitzpatrick was kind of like this, except theirs was more just full game stuff. And yeah, they had a winning record, but I don't know, man. I just don't think that was good for Tua or Fitzpatrick, because Fitzpatrick played well, and Tua played pretty good too for a rookie. It's just it was just so weird. I don't think it's good for either of the quarterbacks. I think you just gotta put your fist on the table and say, we're going this guy or this guy. Make a statement and roll with it until either A, it doesn't work, or B, it does work, and you have a solidified plan at quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, we do have to see what they end up doing. Maybe the Raiders game was not how they're going to do it week 1, week 2. Maybe they start Jimmy G and just bring in Lance for 1 or 2 plays in the red zone to use his running aspect. And I personally do not like that, especially when you draft Trey Lance where you draft him. But I'm not unopposed to that, because I understand what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get his skill set on the field. and
Yeah.
use his athleticism to your advantage. So I understand that. I actually have not thought about the Tua Fitzpatrick angle of all of this until you
Mhm.
brought it up. That's a great point. It was a totally different circumstance, but to
Yes.
me, it showed a lack of faith in Tua
Mhm.
throughout last season when they drafted him number 5 overall. He's coming off a serious injury, and consistently at every major moment or kind of turning point within a ball game, they just yank him and go to Fitzpatrick because it felt like they were more comfortable with Fitzpatrick winning them football games. And why are you starting Tua at all? There was no point in starting Tua
Yeah.
because they felt Fitzpatrick gave them the best chance to win, and they ran their team like that. So that was confusing. In terms of the 49ers aspect of it, you brought it up. I also am confused because to me, if Lance is good enough to play 50% of the snaps, then why not just play him 100% of the snaps? And if Lance isn't good enough to play 100% of the snaps or the 50% of the snaps, why not just name Jimmy G your starter and
Exactly,
have
right?
Lance spell him occasionally? Like, to me, it just feels like they're not even 100% sure on how this quarterback competition is going. Grant this morning mentioned that he felt it was like they're not comfortable with Jimmy G as their starting quarterback, but they don't feel like Trey Lance is as far along as they feel. That's how he read the situation. I actually think
Mhm.
that's a little bit harsh personally. I don't think they see it that way just because they have invested so much into both guys individually in different ways. Jimmy G monetarily, Trey Lance in terms of money and assets. But I am confused overall of how they're going to make this entire two quarterback thing work because to me, even Kyle Shanahan, they asked him after the game, like, what's your science behind alternating these quarterbacks? And he said, I don't even think about it. It's just whatever I feel. And to me, that makes sense. But once teams start getting a feel for it and tendency, oh, if Lance is on the field, they're going to run these run plays. And if Jimmy G's on the field, it's going to be an obvious drop back situation. Oh, they don't want to drop Lance back. Or, oh, they don't want to do this with Jimmy G. And I just think it feels like you brought up the rhythm aspect. Which quarterback is going to get rhythm into the game? And I think it's important because if you're playing a tight ball game, who's going to play fourth quarter with 5 minutes left and you have an important 3rd and 13? Are you just going to ride whichever quarterback's been playing better till then? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Which then brings me back to this team, no matter what, is going to be a running football team. I think we saw that clear as day. When Jimmy G was in, the run game was effective. When Trey Lance was in, the run game is effective. This team is built to run the football. They have a surplus amount of running backs. They have a great run blocking offensive line, and they have an outstanding run game scheme. And that's where I don't get like why do you need to mix and match these quarterbacks? Like, if you want to run the ball 40 times a game, because to me, that's what they have to do to win, because I don't think they can drop back in general with either one of these quarterbacks, then just run with Trey Lance. And
Mhm.
if you feel Trey Lance isn't ready and you don't want him executing your offense, then why not just name Jimmy your starter for now? Bring Lance occasionally to spell him. I don't get not naming your starter, then having Jimmy G technically start, but him and Lance play the same amount of snaps. If that's
Mhm.
the way they're going to go, to me, that's confusing. Maybe I'm not open minded, and maybe this is a revolutionary concept from Kyle Shanahan that's going to work, and I'm going to look like an idiot. If that happens, I'll fully admit, like, wow, I was so stupid. How could I not be open minded and think that was going to work? But at this moment, I'm personally not that invested in this idea, and I would just prefer they would name one guy their starter.
I'm with you, and you actually brought up a point I've been thinking about too with this whole situation. Let's say the score is 24-10. Jimmy G's been playing better than Lance the whole game, and with 8 minutes to go, Lance scores. Your defense gets a stop. Do you send out Lance, who just scored, or do you send out Jimmy G, who's had a better game? Like, those are the questions that are going to be asked. And then, oh, when it doesn't work or it does work, you're going to be saying, should we keep doing this? You know, it worked this one time, although we didn't have general success with it. Or are you just going to be saying, you know, we need to pick one? Like, I think there's too many questions that we have unseen
I'll, I'll
about it.
I'll throw you an opposite scenario. What
Sure.
happens if you're playing a really good game? Jimmy maybe is inconsistent in that game, and Trey Lance is coming along. He's playing great, has some momentum. You go back to Jimmy, and Jimmy throws an interception, and now the other team takes the
Mhm.
momentum because he throws an interception, or vice versa. Lance throws an interception,
Yeah.
and Jimmy's been playing great. How do you get around that fact. One guy was playing so well, and you just switched him out for the other guy who just turned the football over. I mean, these are all questions I wish somebody would ask Kyle Shanahan. I feel like they just go with, oh, okay, he's running a 2 quarterback system. He wants both of these guys to play. But I think these are questions that need to be asked because I think we need to know these things. I feel like he won't tell us. He has no reason to tell us, but I think it's important. Obviously, he's definitely considered these things, but these are my questions with the entire idea of a 2 quarterback strategy, which is why I'm confused that at the moment it feels like this is what the Niners want to do.
And I think I like just trying to find the competitive advantage with doing this, right? And I think that would be it, is that the other, as much as your team doesn't know what's happening, the other team doesn't know either. And they're going to have to game plan for 2 quarterbacks. If the Lions know going in that Lance and Garoppolo will be playing, they're not only going to prepare for one or the other. That, they're going to have to kind of scheme for both of them. And, what do we think Shanahan's going to do if Trey Lance is in versus Jimmy G?
But my thing is, I think the Lions, if they're playing the Niners week 1, knowing that they drafted Trey Lance, I think they would already be preparing for Trey Lance, along with Jimmy G. I'm sure whoever's playing the Bears week 1, I'm sure the Rams are probably prepping for Justin Fields as much as Andy Dalton. I'm sure that there's a lot of different people, like I'm sure the Dolphins are preparing for both Mac Jones and Cam Newton. Like, it's just generally because they drafted the guy. You don't know when they're going to make that switch. It could be mid-game week 1, the way it was with Deshaun Watson, the way it was with Josh Allen. Both of those games, guys replaced their starter week 1 halfway through those games, and they ended up starting basically the rest of the season. So I would be under the assumption they're already preparing for that. In terms of the game planning aspect of it, sure, it looked really, really good and seamless on Sunday, and everybody's head was spinning, and the Raiders didn't know what was going on. Again, that was the Raiders' second team and third team defense.
In a preseason.
So that does need to be taken into account because, yes, it did look good. I'm not going to say it didn't. It really did look good. Both drives were really effective. But the Niners were coming out with their starters with a clear intent on showing off something. And the Raiders clearly were not interested in playing anybody relevant. I mean, Nathan Peterman played that game start to finish, which tells you all you need to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something we haven't seen either. And I think that's the part that's maybe tough for us to wrap our mind around, because if it is such a revolutionary idea, like maybe more teams would do this. But how many teams in the history of the NFL have had a top 5 paid quarterback and then they trade 2 firsts and a third to go up and get this guy who's they really like at number 3? We've just never seen, I guess, something like this, and I think there's maybe a reason for it. I
mean, to me, if you're going to run a 2-quarterback system, it would be best to have 2 cheap quarterbacks. They have 2 highly paid quarterbacks in different ways, and I think Jesse right here nails it. To me, this preseason, it feels like Shanahan wanted to give Lance every opportunity to be the quarterback. I don't think Lance sees that opportunity yet. And so, I don't think they're comfortable. I mean, if they were comfortable with Jimmy G starting this year and all of that, why did they trade so much to go get a quarterback? You trade so much to go get a quarterback at pick 3, not so that he can start 2 years from now, because you want him to be your starter now. You draft that quarterback to be your starter now, right? I mean, they traded up. They traded up a month before the draft, so they didn't trade up for a player. They traded up for a quarterback. That's where I brought up this distinction this morning. The Chiefs traded up specifically, in my opinion, for Patrick Mahomes. If Patrick Mahomes went number 4 in that draft, I don't think the Chiefs trade up for Deshaun Watson. They didn't trade up for a quarterback. They traded up for Patrick Mahomes. The Niners traded up for a quarterback, and that quarterback ended up being Trey Lance. They didn't trade up for Trey Lance. They traded up for a quarterback, because they did it a month before the draft and then further studied guys and ultimately landed at Trey Lance, which seems to be a great decision so far. And I think that's where Jesse nails it. I think if Trey Lance was starting, if they could definitively name him the starter, Jimmy G would 100% be the backup. I just think at this point they can't do that. So they're just trying to give Lance every opportunity to continue to grow and eventually seize that job, hopefully by week 3, week 4.
And at the minimum, he's starting against the Bears, because there's no way that they'll There won't be a Justin Fields versus Trey Lance game on Halloween. Like there's just no way that doesn't happen.
Well, I'm going to that game. I really want to see
You'll see
Jimmy Garoppolo.
You will
I'm playing. I'm playing that. That game is going to be awesome. But it looks like we have a few questions